Okay, so hello, good morning, or rather good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of GEARINGROLES project, I would like to welcome you to this webinar on gender information management systems. This is one of the many webinars and trainings offered to GEARINGROLES partners and also to other projects and organizations. We are sure you will find this one very interesting and especially useful for your own organizations. So without further delay, I will pass the floor to Lud Merger, that yellow window, who will lead the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Laia. Welcome, everybody. We're happy to have you here this afternoon, and we will talk about gender information management systems. We all know how important it is to collect data on the proportions of women and men in our organizations, among staff and also at student level. It's not always easy to do that, nor is it straightforward, although it's very important both for the analysis at the start of a gender equality plan, but also for internal monitoring and to see whether we make progress with the efforts that we undertake. So we have two speakers here with us today that will share with us some very inspiring practices we find and that you can all learn from, and hopefully we'll be able to pick up some of the elements that they will be sharing with us. So we will start with Ricard de la Vega from the Polytechnic University in Catalonia. The UPC was a partner in the GECO project. The GECO project has been a sister project of our GEARINGROLES project that's ended this year. So they finalized their trajectory with the EU funds and have come to completion. The other speaker is Anna Beleng Amil from Central European University. They are partner in the SUPERA project, and SUPERA has entered its last year and will end in June 2022. So starting with Ricard. Ricard is by education and training, he's a psychologist, and he has also a master in human resources. He works as a professor at the University of Barcelona, where he's teaching in the Faculty of Economics and Business. And he's also full-time quality and strategy consultant for UPC. Ricard, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lute. It's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you. It's a pity. It's a pity not to be closer to you. The other days we were sharing a huge event in Barcelona in UPC. Maybe you know the initiative of the European universities. UPC belongs to one of them. It's called Unite. We were sharing for 3 days the project with a lot of people coming from different universities of all over Europe. It's a pity due to COVID not to share that kind of things with you, but unfortunately we can do that. So let's use what we have got, which is called Zoom, and let's take profit of it. So I am going to share my computer, my screen. I've got a presentation, just a short presentation, and then I think it will be more interesting for you just to watch our information system. So I am going to share my computer. Sure. Yeah, I think it's okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
So I would like to share with you in a brief manner some things and some ideas about what gender analysis we do in UPC. Well, Lutta didn't tell it because I didn't tell her that my passion is the aviation world. Here you can see inside the cockpit the commander, the captain, and she's watching some information in some papers, but also in the main screens she's using in order to have a safe flight. So in this life, in the life we have to live, the information, not only the data, but also the information is a must to have a good trip, no, in our lives. So the universities has got similar troubles and similar opportunities as we talk about when flying, no? Just one thing, remember, no? When we talk about indicators, we are talking about measures that we can use to point out something, no? And these kinds of indicators are very well known, and we can resume in mainly four kinds of info, no? The quantitative information, for example, a scale; the qualitative information, an opinion, for example, or a video, or some letters or opinions about something, no? Then information or indicators relating to money or cost or effectiveness. And finally, information or indicators relating to time, okay? So what you are going to then see is our informational system linked to the gender analysis we do in UPC, using mainly these kinds of indicators. Just a more technical idea is that what we do, it's not a simple thing. It's in fact, it's a really tough thing, because what we do is to use primary databases, like, for example, things very well known all over the world, like the ESP system, the SAP, what we call the SAP, which is really well known in the economic areas. And then with this kind of informational areas or databases, like, for example, you see in the left screen, it's called Prisma, DRAG, SAP, and so on. We use the primary information to gather all the data we need in order to build an informational system, mainly oriented to let the decision-making processes, okay? But just to resume in a single slide doesn't mean that is an easy question. In fact, it's a tough problem. But I think for you, the interesting part of it, because mainly it's open, it's free, and everybody can take a look, without asking for permission. It's always free, it's public. We really believe as a university in free information, in free data. You are going to watch two different things. The first one is the one related to data, and here is what we call the main global database of data. As you can see here, we have all the static information of the information of UPC. This will be a global view, but and then on the down left corner, you can see the link when you can go and take a look about all the informational system we have got for free for everybody. But I think that for all of you will be, as you can see here, when it says it's in Catalan, but I think you are not going to have any problem to understand it. When you see here quadres de comandament in Catalan means a scorecard. So this will be the most interesting part for you, because this is the part where you can find the data transformed into information. So here, for example, when we talk about docencia, means teaching, research, personnel, economy, and so on, no? And a lot of information linked to gender, okay? Genere means, in Catalan, gender. So if you are interested in gender, just only you have to go to point out to this specific point, and that's all. But as I was telling you, I think you will find the most interesting thing for you, I think, will be the informational system we use. Is based in a package in a software called Power BI, is Power Business Intelligence. Software called that way. It's from, I think it's from Microsoft. We have got a license as a university, and we use this software in order to transform the data into information. And here, as you can see, just clicking this link, you can get access to the informational system, and then just cross the fingers, no? Just with one click, you will get access to the Microsoft Power Business Intelligence in some seconds. And then, as you can see here, you have got a lot of different specific informations about gender. But on the down part of the screen, as you can see, it says 1 of 28. Then just clicking here, we can start watching a lot of information about gender. So just 1 second. Because...
Sorry, Ricard, you're not sharing that screen.
I'm sorry,
you're
I'm sorry.
Sharing the,
yes,
the
you're
PPT.
right. I need to share my screen. Just 1 second.
Sure.
Now you can hear, you can see it?
No, we still see the slide.
You still are seeing the slide. Okay. Just let me to do it again. I think right now it will work for you. Now it's
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so in real time, you are contemplating the informational system we have been creating in order to look at specific things as a university we are interested and worried about. One of these is the gender approach. Okay, so for example, as I was telling to you, there are 28 specific views of this information. You don't have to do anything. It's almost automatic, but then you can do some different operations in order to tailor what you are contemplating. But for example, if you advance in the pages that we can see, you can see different things. For example, in these screens, what we are looking is the amount of people enrolled in the university, in UPC, in bachelor's and master's by gender. Okay, so as you can see, here are a lot of different options to personalize what you want or are intended to look at. For example, imagine that you want to know something more detailed in architecture. Just by clicking here, here you can look what is the total amount of women who are enrolled in the architecture area of UPC. For example, as you can see here is almost 50% man and 50% women. Then the same information by gender, the evolution of the enrollment in UPC. And here, as you can see, for example, from the very beginning, we started to introduce data is in the year 12-13 from now, 21-22. As you can see, we can see an increase, and a slight increase of the percentage of women that are taking part of the enrollment in UPC. It's a tough thing to increase the number of women, because usually technology is contemplated or perceived as something more related to men than women. We can also not something specifically related to gender, but we can cross by gender, like where is these people coming from in terms of Catalonia, or For example, in terms of different regions of Catalonia, or even in terms of the world. So as you can see, this system is really powerful when it comes to talk about decision-making processes. And as you can see, we can advance and to know where these students are coming from, the doctorate, the PhD, enrollment also by gender, and for example, another information, the gender, the map, the global map for doctorate, the PhD, and the incoming students, the outgoing students of our own university by gender also, and when they finish, the amount of students that have got a work and the money they got, as you can see, in a very specific detail, in order to know a lot of things about their labor experience. As you can see, we have got a lot of information that requires a lot of time in order to understand this amount of information. And finally, a specific part also of the information is related to the distribution of our professors in terms of gender also. I mean, the amount of he professors and she professors we have got in terms also of categories of different professors. We have also this information for the administrative staff like me, but as you can see, until the end of the for research personnel also, for research projects also, and always this information is linked to the gender. Okay, so just for 1 second, imagine that you are working in a university and you want to decide something and you are unsure about what you should do in terms of decision-making processes, and you can use this kind of information. For example, if you are working in a specific school inside or in a faculty or in a department inside the university, you can use this information in order to decide something. So sorry, just trying to share my screen again. At the end of the presentation, are you watching my presentation now? Yeah, just these two informational systems, the more contextual one and the more detailed one. A lot of information, we can get a lot of information of this Power BI informational system. And then but then I think all in all, this is just information. But the funny idea is that we can work with this, not only data, but information in order, sorry, I had a 10 minutes alarm just to finish. I think the most interesting part is what you can do afterwards. I mean, after knowing that what we are, what we really are, not what we expect to be or what we would like to be, we develop some projects or programs like you are watching here, IKEA Steam. It's like we are, it's like saying in English, here we are playing with the concept of STEAM in order to increase the amount of SHE students that we have got here in GPC. And I don't want to steal more time. I will finish right here. And that was my presentation.
Thank you, Ricard. You're not stealing our time, you're giving yours. Thank you so much for the interesting presentation. We will have a Q&A session for your information after the two presentations, but feel free when you have issues, questions, reflections that you want to share, type them in the chat and we can address them so after the speech of Anna as well. So please address Ricard as well in your chat messages. So now we will listen to Anna Beleng-Amil. She is currently the Gender Equality Officer at Central European University. By education, she's a clinical psychologist. She has worked as a clinical psychologist in her home country, Argentina, before doing a master in women's and gender studies. She came to Europe, started working at Central European University, first as a project manager and now as a gender equality officer. She's in charge of the first gender equality plan of the CEU, in charge of its design, its implementation and monitoring, and she's coordinating that for Supera, as I said before. So Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lut, for the invite and for the words. I'm going to share my screen now. And hopefully you can see it in presentation mode.
Yes, we do.
Great. Ricard, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. What you described that you have in place at UPC is heaven for us. That would really be the solution to most of our sorrows at Central European University. So my presentation will be probably 20 kilometers before the end line that Ricard just shared with us. Showing you this presentation is called Gender Information Management System at CEU, Challenges and More Challenges. Generally, it is challenges and successes, but in this case, I would say it's challenges and more challenges and more challenges. But hopefully, my pain, it's a bit of yours in your institutions, and I might be able to give you some clues on how to navigate problems that you might encounter while building your gender information management system. So here we go. First, explaining a bit the need that we had at CEU, that we spotted. As Lut mentioned, we are part of Supera project, and in 2018 and 19, we conducted our first baseline assessment of the status of gender equality in our university. It was a 6-month effort that covered, it was a very, very comprehensive coverage of all key action areas. And we found that we had institutional deficiencies, especially in HR, in human resources, data collection, processing, and analysis. The side of the students' database is in quite good shape, especially compared with this one. And this is something that I always mention, that this problem is not a problem that is directly related to gender inequality. So this is a long-term structural problem of our university in terms of how our university manages their HR data, their employee-related data. But it has a very negative impact when it comes to gender equality efforts, basically because it's very, very difficult and almost impossible to do institutional research for gender equality or any other purpose without good quality data. And as Ricard mentioned at the ending, towards the ending of his presentation, without data, we're flying blind. So we cannot really make any sort of evidence-based decision-making if we cannot see what's going on. So generally, or at least what I came up with during my experience, this is absolutely of my own invention. There are 5 things that we have to pay attention to when it comes to data. So the data collection, so the data is collected, how it is collected, the format, which quality is this data, so what was the quality of this data, who has access to that data, and who analyzes that data. So it's not only about what we collect, but how good, who can see it then afterwards, and who is going to perform the analysis. So there are many aspects, and we found problems in each of all of them, of course. What we found, that for many indicators that we needed to calculate, there was actually no data. So for example, we don't have data on the gender distribution of job applicants, from which successful job candidates are chosen. We don't have data on employees who have care duties, especially we're talking about children. We don't have data on any benefits received by employees apart from the salaries. So salaries is there, but other compensations like bonuses and benefits were not there. And we didn't have teaching, supervision, and service portfolio of members of the academic staff, along many other things that we didn't have, but those were the most relevant. Then what happened, that sometimes we did have the data, but the format of the data collection was on paper. So here we travel back in time to the 50s, and in order to analyze data, we had people literally going through hard copies of contracts, which, as you imagine, is not a sustainable strategy. It takes a huge amount of energy and time to dig, and it becomes obsolete very fast. So that's another big issue. Then the quality of the recorded data, we found surprises there as well. We had duplicated entries for employees. We had lack of consistencies across job titles. So as you probably know, Central European University was based in Budapest, and we had to move to Vienna 2 years ago because of political reasons. And this means that we navigated basically three languages: Hungarian, German, and English, because it's an American university. And we found that some records were made in Hungarian, some records were made in English. So when you try to match records, the same job title in two different languages do not match. So, and then, for example, some erratic entries. For example, when they didn't know for how long the contract offer would be for some employees, they would enter end of contract year 2070. So this is what we found when we went to check. And other examples that I will tell you later. And then what happened when we tried to access this data? Well, it happened that we didn't have access due to GDPR constraints. So basically the most difficult data, controversial data to access is always pay data. Bear in mind that Central European University is a private university, so we do not follow other public universities in their salary scales, which are generally public because employees of public universities or research institutes tend to be public servants. It's not our case. We have discretion on what we do with our salaries, which means that it's also is considered to be, of course, personal data. And back then in 2018, it was not made available for analysis for neither to me, neither to our institutional research office. HRO was monopolizing the data processing and analysis instead of delegating it to a unit with expertise. So when it came to the quality, sorry, why did this happen? We don't know, but it's not the first time. When it came to the quality of the data, HRO already delivered aggregated data. So we cannot check how the calculations were made. We cannot check the quality of the analysis. Basically, it was not in expert hands. So we came up with the decision that we will put together a gender-sensitive handbook on data collection and monitoring to cover all of the data gaps and to clarify the processes of collecting, storing, accessing, and analyzing data. So for this, it was me, the gender equality officer, and a fantastic colleague of mine, a senior research officer in the institutional research office in our university, which is a big blessing that we have. So the two of us sat together and devised a handbook, so put together a handbook. We took inspiration from She Figures, the European Commission publication, and all of our sister projects, I would say. Many of them have public deliverables, so where they basically go through the indicators that they measure and they monitor. So we took inspiration from that and from all the gaps that we identified during our assessment. The goal was basically to fill in the identified gaps in CEU's data collection patterns with the objective of allowing the systematic monitoring over time of the status of gender equality. We conducted a very participatory approach. You might imagine that we had data requests and data needs in almost all of the administrative units at CEU. So we basically sat down with each and every unit, checking which data was available, what data is not available, and should be included in the handbook. And we had internal and external review of this handbook. 2 faculty members in our university had a look at it. It's 60-page, 80-page document, so they were very dedicated. And we also had external expert review. She's an expert in gender statistics, and she's part of our international advisory board in Supera. The output is this is the cover of the output, Handbook of Gender Sensitive Data Collection and Monitoring. It has 47 indicators to measure across 4 key action areas, which probably you're familiar with: recruitment, selection, and career progression, leadership and decision-making, gender dimension in research and knowledge transfer, and gender biases, sexism, and sexual harassment. All of these are quantitative indicators. We try to include a non-binary approach to gender and an intersectional approach called generally Gender Plus. It has its limitations. It's very difficult in Hungary and generally in Europe to collect data related to ethnicity, for example. So sometimes, at least for the moment, we're using proxies for that, but that's the spirit of the handbook. It's thought to be a living document with new editions. This means that we will be constantly updating the handbook and replacing those indicators that maybe will lose institutional significance, and we'll replace them with others. We don't know. And the handbook has 3 sections. The first section is on data collection. All the data that different units and bodies across EU should collect on an ongoing basis. And the section is divided by responsible units. So people don't have to read the handbook in its totality. They can only read those 2 pages dedicated to their unit. The second section is on data monitoring. And there is where we list all the quantitative indicators that we want to diagnose or that we want to monitor in order to assess the impact of implemented measures. So let's see if we made some change or not with the measures that we took. For each of the indicators, we have a rationale, a short definition, a computation method, the data that is needed from the first section, and the specifications for the calculations are provided. And the third section is a monitoring protocol, which defines the monitoring activities, sets the frequency, provides the content, and outlines institutional processes of discussing results. So basically, at what moment of the year we will develop, we will assess certain indicators, and what are we going to do with that? Either write a report, present it in each fora, etc., etc. And all of this was supported by a training. So we had a training at CEU where our international advisory board member, who is an expert in gender statistics, came to CEU to teach our institutional research office, our GDPR officer and legal counsel, and our IT people, how we could make all of this work. So some successes. We managed to run equal pay for equal work in the academic body. We managed to measure the gender distribution of workload in the academic body. We managed to have a pretty decent calculation of our gender pay gap, and also a nationality/region pay gap. So a bit of, we don't have ethnicity as a category as of yet, but we do have nationalities, and we managed to we managed to calculate that. In terms of challenges, gender distribution of promotion is still very problematic due to inaccurate historical data. So data is getting better by the minute, but unfortunately we cannot look that much far ago without encountering data that is really of no use. It's very problematic also to calculate the gender distribution of academic voluntary resignations. We know that we're losing women, but we don't know how much. And we don't have proper records on resignations. For you to have an example, when I try to have a list of people who had resigned, voluntarily left the university, the records included people that retired, which is actually not a voluntary resignation, and also people who actually had died. So this is for you to have an idea of the difficulties that we have with the quality of the data. Gender distribution of bonuses and other benefits besides salaries also still showing problematic due to inaccurate or lack of records. And one that is also quite problematic, and we try to improve it, and still we are not making much progress, is checking the gender of the applicants for academic positions. Unfortunately, we don't have an online platform for applying for jobs at CEU. We still do it in the 90s, where people would attach a CV to an email. So we don't have a way of digitalizing or a digitalized platform where we could then extract data such as gender. And this makes, basically this makes the calculations, I wouldn't say impossible because they could be done by hand, but very time consuming and also potentially inaccurate, because this would mean that whomever is making the calculations has to guess the gender of the applicant from their name. And this is not a good way of recording gender. So what are our steps and challenges ahead? The first sort of cluster of challenges has to do with working with IT and the HRO department to detect the problematic areas of data collection and develop forms for data collection where those are missing. And the most important thing that Ricard mentioned and showed as a fantastic example of is to create linkages in databases. So to develop one unified database for employees, because we basically have information dispersed across a zillion different databases, and they don't come together to one unified database. So we couldn't ever have business BI as Catalonia has. And adapt HR software to include non-binary gender categories. This is a very complicated one because we were using a very outdated HR software management system. Hopefully this is going to be possible in the near future. The main challenge we face, of course, is lack of capacity, because gender equality is never urgent for any institution, unfortunately. And we have a high turnover of data analysts. So to put it somehow, some brilliant data analysts join CEU, they see the mess and they run away, to put a bit of humor in the presentation. So we cannot keep them for long. And then another chunk of work is with the legal team to sign off a clearance system, which was informally developed for data access for our institutional research office. So basically we want a signed authorization for our institutional research office, who are the experts on conducting calculations, to have access to GDPR, to personal data, in order to be able to do what they need to do. And hopefully at some point, maybe I will be able to have access to this data as well, but that's a question mark. And then work with them in GDPR compliance for all the new forms of data collection that we need. So for each new data that we need to collect, we need to go through a process of GDPR analysis to see how we can do this in a way that is compliant. The main challenge at unit level is lack of capacity, and some lack of proactive attitudes toward problem resolution. So generally what happens is that the internal GDPR officers, these are people who are legally liable for any data breaches. So of course, and logically so, they will have a conservative approach towards data collection and data management. And you know that conservative approaches don't go very well with gender equality transformation practices. So there's always there let's call it a conflict of interest that we have to navigate. And then the main challenge at the highest level of leadership is the lack of support and the deprioritization of gender equality matters and generally of structural matters. So the problems with the HRO software management and data management is generally not something that comes up as the first thing on the list to tackle for leadership. Be aware that we are navigating a move from one country to the other in the middle of lockdown. Our window of opportunity that is making me very hopeful is that now, as you know, the European Commission has set the GEP requirement for institutions applying for grants. And this is not just it, but they have 4 points that are mandatory requirements for these GEPs. And one of them is a data management system for assessing and monitoring indicators, that it should be in place. So of course, this is not a very strong requirement per se, in the sense that it doesn't give too much details about the quality of this that this data monitoring should have. But at least I think it's a very important first push for our institutions to prioritize information management as something that we should strive for at the very top quality, as high as a quality of as possible. So this is what I wanted to share with you. Look forward to the Q&A. I hope it was interesting and you could relate somehow to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I'm aware that both presentations might sound to the partners and to the other attendants as already high achievements and maybe discouraging in a way in comparison to where you find yourselves. But as you see, and as Anna presented also, the great strides forward have happened since the start of the project. So it is possible to achieve major steps forward. So, but first I would like to ask maybe Ricard if you want to react to Anna and to some of the points that she raised, and then Anna, if you have questions for Ricard, as you said in the beginning, you feel like he and UPC are also already miles ahead of CEU. So I would like first to open the floor to the two of you to react to each other. So Ricard, I leave the floor first to you.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think everything of Anna was really interesting. When I was listening to her, I was remembering the movie Star Wars. Maybe you remember the first one, the previous one. And in one moment, Darth Vader said, "Don't be obfuscate or something like that for this technological terror you are creating." No, referring to the star. No. I think we have to remember that when we create something like, for example, a database on whatever you think, I think the most important thing is always what we want to get from that. That kind of things are never a technological matter, are always a socio-cultural problem. No? And I think that the strategy of the institution, the values of the institution are up to that technological views or the technological problems always. And I think this is the main idea I would like to share with all of you. It's not a technological problem. It's not a problem regarding technological tools or linking databases. Not at all. It's a problem of the way we work, no? And I think we have to really understand what we can get from that and what we need from that. Okay, I think this is the key point.
Thank you, Ricard. Anna, I will give you the floor now to react, and then I will turn to Elida because she typed in the chat that she has many questions.
That's great. No, just to repeat, I would just repeat myself. What Ricard has shared with us is definitely our goal at CU. We have this big problem with our databases, and I think that also to second what Ricard just said, we are trying to get there, but with a very thoughtful process of what is the information that we want that BI to show us. So, and to define what is important for us to be able to measure that has institutional relevance. So it's not just a copycat of what other institutions are doing, but to use the technology with a very clear idea of what are the indicators that are problematic for us and that we want to keep an eye on. So that's where the participatory approach steps in. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Elida, please turn on your mic.
Yeah. Thanks. Hi, I have met Anna before, so hi to her especially. And hi, Ricard. Thank you for your presentation. So I will ask all of my questions. So I send them beforehand. So first to Ricard. I have two questions. One is a technical one because I have no idea about these databases. How do you integrate your data with Power BI in a publicly available way? Because I know that you can use it for your own if you purchase the Power BI app, or if you, I don't know, already have it, but I don't know how to do it publicly available. And my second question for you is, do you have any examples of how you use these data visualization systems you have? So for instance, are your students using these to, I don't know, write reports or doing any researches on them? Do you encourage this, or is this something that is how to say widespread in terms of visibility for everyone at the school? My questions to Anna: how was the data non-binary and intersectional? Because we really had hard time imagining how to categorize our data in those ways. I don't know if this is a very small detail, but I was just curious, how did you calculate equal work? If this is too much of a detail, you can just dismiss it. To both of the speakers, do you have any protocols or principles for data regarding sexual harassment? So for instance, we have a mechanism where we receive complaints about sexual harassment, and because there's no systematic data collection about who reported, how you collect them, how they will be stored after all this incident is over, and so on. And it is just emails from individuals coming back and forth and received by the committee of the sexual harassment, which are professors. And I was especially curious about this because recently a university in Turkey, Boğaziçi University, actually fired the sexual harassment officer who was receiving these emails about sexual harassment complaints, and the email address that people were sending these complaints became directed to the dean or director himself, and it was super problematic and made people so concerned about their privacy. Yeah, thank you.
Ricard, I will let you answer first.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I get the first question, but I will try to ask, and then if you want, Elida, you ask me again, okay? The thing is that we have got a lot of database, huh? And what we do is just an extraction of this specific database to a different database where all the different informations are linked in a very specific way that lets us to exploit these kind of informations that in their previous databases who are isolated is not possible. And this is thank you to the Power by Business Information System, as I was sharing with all of you. And the second question is that no one really is interested in the information, no one. The only people who has got something to do or to deal with it. For example, when it comes to the performance of the students, the schools are really interested in that kind of information, but the students are not interested in that kind of information. It doesn't matter if the students' performance is high, is low, is medium, the students are not interested in that kind of information. Only the people who is in charge of decision-making processes. And the same thing is with the gender things, or whatever you think. So as I was telling to you, we have got these systems wide open. Any of you can take a look at it and play with them. So the information is not private. But what we know is unless you have got a very specific interest in that kind of information, you are not going to use it.
Anna?
There you go. Always takes these 3 uncomfortable seconds until I find the unmute button. I hope I'm not the only one, each and every time. I will start with the question that the question on sexual harassment, because something here I can brag about. So I will take the opportunity to brag about this. So we are in the final stages, literally final stages of releasing a smartphone app that was designed by our internal IT unit in collaboration with me, of course, and some other very smart people in our university, which is called Speak Up. So that's a play of words. And it's there to submit complaints of harassment and sexual harassment in our university. And this app has 2 interfaces. One is for the public, so for the community to make complaints. And the other interface is for an ombudsperson network that we instituted at CU, who will handle those cases, and the chair of the disciplinary committee, who takes care of the formal complaints against harassment. So what you're mentioning, Elida, is exactly the case, was exactly the case at CU until now, that there were no records whatsoever of harassment and sexual harassment. Nobody knew where these complaints went, how they were handled, not at all. It was literally a huge vacuum, and that we diagnosed during our assessment, and we came up with the idea of instituting this online app as both a complaint mechanism, but also storage and handling of the data. And this app, what it will do is that it will provide us with anonymous reporting every 2 years. We're going to check what's going on. And we will be able to extract anonymized information from that app. So hopefully this will solve all of our problems related to data in terms of harassment. So that's it. Equal work, equal pay for equal work, that's a tricky one, how we calculate that. So I would say the easiest, but of course inaccurate way of calculating equal pay for equal work is calculating the pay gap within the same rank. So this is only for us, only possible for the academic body, because for administrative people, we don't have ranks. I'm not going to get into that. But for academic body, we do have ranks. And what we ran was a pay gap calculation within ranks. So that's one. And it's, of course, always inaccurate, because the fact that two people have the same rank doesn't mean that necessarily they work the same. So there's another layer there. At CU, we're quite fortunate, and we took advantage of this fortune. Every year, academic staff who are resident need to submit a form that is called activity report, in which they say what they've done in terms of teaching, research, and service to community. And first, this was basically a Word document, but doing Supera, what we did is we turned this into also an app. We're using these Power Apps from Microsoft, so it's not for free. I mean, but if you already bought the Microsoft package, you get the Power Apps. So the IT also developed an app for this. So all resident faculty get in there. They say how much they have published, what they have taught, how many credits, how many people they supervise, from which level, blah, 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 blah. And all of this is also extracted from there, basically in an Excel sheet, in a beautiful raw database with which we can do all sorts of calculations. So we also have a report on equal work per rank that is gender disaggregated. And there we can totally see what you can imagine that we will see is that this classic gender division of labor in universities, women taking the lion's share of teaching and supervision and service to community, while men do not. And that generally is the case that they tend to publish more, and then their careers advance because they publish more, etc., etc. So those were our two layers of equal pay for equal work. And then the non-binary and intersectionality aspects. For non-binary, basically what we're doing is to incorporate a third category in all databases. So when we collect data from applicants, from students, from employees, we give them the option to choose a non-binary category there. And what I generally also use is a fourth category that says I prefer to self-describe, and I leave a free text for people to say there whatever they want about their gender. It's always better to let people define themselves. Otherwise, also the list would be too long, because you have to put there a lot of things like agender, gender fluid, queer. I mean, there are a lot of non-binary gender identities. So that was, I wouldn't say it's easy. It's not easy at all, because this poses a lot of GDPR questions, but this is what we've done. And in terms of intersectionality, we are trying to make progress, not with ethnicity. That was not the first one we tackled, because we know that is a very difficult battle, but we incorporated disability status. So people can disclose if they want, if they have a disability. Care responsibilities, basically number of dependents. These were the two categories that we incorporate, or we're trying to incorporate now, in the process of incorporating. The one authenticity, we're going to leave that battle for a bit later. And as you've seen in my presentation, we're also using the proxy of nationality, which is not a great perfect proxy for ethnicity. But trust me, what you can see there is, at least in our experience, in my experience of calculating these pay gaps with nationalities, we're not that many people in our university, so we couldn't go country by country, but we cluster countries in geopolitical regions. And what we could see there was extremely interesting. So even if it's not ethnicity, a proxy like nationality or country of origin will tell you a lot about the dynamics in your university. So yeah, I hope I answered to your question. I had a direct message from Alina saying if the I guess she was referring to the handbooks. She says, is the book available online? No, and every time I present the handbook, people ask me, can you share it? I promise, totally promise that we will make it available. It's just, it needs edits, and I'm procrastinating on those because I have much more urgent things on my table, which I have to put off fires all the time. So since it needs some formatting and checking quotes and blah, 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 and that's not super urgent for me, that's the truth. It's hanging there, and I promise everybody that once the edits are done, this handbook will be circulated. Hopefully before the end of the year, I'm gonna sit and do what I have to do with this handbook so everybody can enjoy it, rejoice in it. Thank you.
Thank you too, Anna. And feel free to send it to us, and we will then share it with the partners. Okay. I see Lucinda also has her hand up.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ricard and Anna, for your presentations. They are really, really very, very helpful for us. And I have a question to Anna that Alina has already written in the chat. So I know. And regarding Ricard, I think it's very interesting data management system. In our case at GEGOT, we have a problem since we are a small school, a very big university. So all these kind of decisions are taken at university level, not at the school level. So we have the same kind of information you do, and I think it's not easy. It's not difficult from a technical point of view to extract the information we need, organized by gender, but we can't do this at the level of school. So what, to be practical, what I'm trying to do is have a conversation with the vice rector in charge of this, because fortunately now it's mandatory to have this information to benefit from EU grants. So in case I succeed in this kind of approach, do you think it's possible to contact you, or if they want to have more information, this would be very helpful to the way I will approach the rector or the vice rector, because of course it's the kind of decision we can take here at GEGOT, because there are central systems. So what we are doing here, and in fact we've created a working group to deal with this, which is important. And fortunately, the executive director and the people in charge of the different units are cooperating with us. So we have defined the indicators we need for monitoring and so on. But in fact, it's a lot of work we have to do, and it was possible to save a lot of time and resources. And it would be also very, very important for us if we could implement this kind of system at university level. So, but you know, people, as you mentioned, are not very interested in gender issues and gender inequalities. It's not the most important priority at the university level. So we must try to find a way to encourage them. Are you available? If needed, I can send you an email or have a conversation if I succeed in, or not.
Yeah, sure, Maria.
Okay, yeah. So great.
But I listening to you, I was thinking that the more bigger you are, the more complex it is. So being a little university is never a problem.
The university is very big. The University of Lisbon is the biggest in Portugal. The question is that we have 18 schools and we are just a small
But the problem is not the size. The problem is always the people.
Yes, so but it's a kind, because if it was a kind of decision you could take here in my school, I think that it's difficult, but well, I think we can manage. But it's not the case. So we need to convince people at the university level, and there are good arguments because it's the information we need and the requirements made by the EU Commission. So I'm trying, a way to approach, and I think I can have a meeting with the rector or the vice rector in charge. But to be productive, I need to have more information. So I've already had a look before this webinar in your website, and it's very impressive because we have the information you already have. But in different systems, we have one for students, which is called Phoenix, and we have another for human resources, and we also have for research and so on. The problem is to connect all this information. And we have the biggest school and most important in Portugal. They are experts, once they need to have this information to meet the requirements of the EU, maybe I can succeed to try to have a meeting, because for us here it's a lot of work to collect this information which is available and to produce our reports for monitoring purposes of our GEP here at IGOT, the Institute of Geography and Spatial Planning. The core team had a lot of work, spend a lot of hours, and we are researchers and teachers to collect the information and also to analyze it and so on. So then we define the indicators you need, and now the staff, the administrative staff, is cooperating with us, with our team, in order to collect the information. But I'm aware of the time consuming, so I just wanted to go one step further and try to have something available similar to what you have. And the idea is not to ask them to collect more information, but just take advantage of what we have now, and then to make available this information disaggregated.
Lucinda, I will send me an email and I will put you in touch with Ricard, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Are there other questions from anyone? I saw that Panagiota for a moment switched on the camera. Do you want to ask a question?
Actually, no, most of the questions I had were already answered. It's really useful for me because currently we just shared the indicators at the Cyprus University of Technology, and we are facing many of the challenges that were mentioned before by Anna, and that was really, I could say, supportive, because we received feedback about lack of some data on paper. I had a couple of questions, but they were already answered, so I was taking notes. So nothing for now. Thank you. Thank you for organizing this.
Okay, you're welcome. I have a question for Anna and also a question for Ricard. In fact, the question for Ricard relates to what Anna was mentioning. Do you have at UPC information about people leaving the organization? Because I don't think you mentioned that. So is that part of your data system? And then a question for Anna is, your system is new, and the processes you put in place are also new. So do you plan a follow-up on how this is perceived and experienced by the staff? Because I can imagine that some might see it as a big additional burden. Is that so? So what resistance do you encounter for amongst the staff for doing this effort? So I will first give the floor to Ricard to answer.
If I understood well, you are asking me if whether we have an information system about people leaving the university, but I mean the people who is working inside the university.
For the ones leaving, because Anna mentioned that it's also important to monitor the ratios of men and women leaving the university, and then possibly to investigate further what are the reasons behind them quitting university. So is this also an indicator or numbers and data that you monitor?
Well, the ratio of people leaving the university is almost zero. So almost no one leaves the university after entering. What we have got is a huge amount of information regarding the position, the specific position of men and women as for example, when we talk about having a position as a professor, because a specific position a professor has got links specifically the money or the earns that annually is going to get, and the probabilities of promotion and so on. So all this kind of information, we have got it in a very specific detailed manner. That was what you wanted to know, Lut?
Yeah, people quitting academia. So we know the leaky pipeline, and we know that women tend to drop out more than men. So that's also an indicator more at a macro level, but is that also monitored at institutional level? That was my question. Thank you. Anna?
Thank you, Lut, for your question, and you really hit the head of the nail there. I think it's what you mentioned has a lot to do with conversations that I'm pushing right now at the university about sustainability of the gender equality efforts beyond the life of the Supera project. Because of course, taking care of gender equality implies a very augmented workload for people in key offices. And if this is not accompanied by a strategy on the side of leadership to prioritize this and to actually allocate hours of people's working hours to this particular objective, it only ends up being an added responsibility on top of the already overloaded employee body. So I think right now, as it is actually as our current data management system looks like, it is a lot of work, a lot of added work to monitor gender equality. But if we keep working on getting to where Ricard is, then this will be the workload for this particular issue is going to be almost zero, because we will need no data diggers anymore. We're just going to be able to access a platform and take that information out ourselves. So basically what I'm trying now, that is part of the gender equality plan, but I need to make it come true, is that some key offices at CU, say human resources, legal counsel, student records, or administrative office that have a very, very strong engagement. Yeah, this definitely gender equality is of their business. What we're trying to do is to get our leadership to contract part-time, so let's say 0.3 or 30%, 20% of some employee under that unit to be specially dedicated to gender equality, but not in a way that it adds to their workload, but actually putting money on top, because we think that it's much better to have a couple of hours per week of somebody in HR, of somebody in student records, of somebody in legal who could liaise with me and work in gender equality, than have, for example, a second gender equality officer. So that's basically what we're trying to do. Also for people not to resent gender equality efforts as something that is actually a burden for them, but rather convince our leadership to give us tiny bits of dedicated hours that will be reflected in these people contracts and in these people job descriptions. Because so far what we have, as probably all of you know, is people who are volunteering for this out of their love for the cause. And we cannot abuse the love of people for gender equality because they get burnt out, and we cannot allow that to happen. So this is part, thank you very much, Lut, for the question, because this is a very important part of our sustainability plan. So how this will continue working once European project is over.
Great. And it's good to hear that this is also a concern that is monitored, of course, in view of sustainability. It's hugely important. Are there additional questions from the audience? If not, I will ask my colleague Fasia to share in the chat an exit questionnaire. It's a very short questionnaire online, and we would like to ask you to complete it. It's important for us also to monitor the quality of what we do as service providers to the partners in the consortium in GEARINGROLES. So Fasia has put it there. Please take a few minutes now to complete it, and then we can close the webinar. And thank you to the speakers, Anna and Ricard. Thank you so much for giving your time and sharing your practices with us. It was very, very interesting, and I hope the partners will be able to implement some of these ideas into practice as well.
I hope so too, Luke. Thanks once again for the invitation. Always a pleasure to talk to colleagues and share the pain.
Maybe that's a bit motivating to feel that it's a shared pain.
Yes, always comforting.
Thank you.